pickup truck was parked in front of my house one bright Monday morning when Karen, queen of the cul-de-sac, self-appointed general of neighborhood aesthetics, and dictator of parking angles, noticed it. She stood there squinting at it as if it had just insulted her mother. It wasn't crooked, it wasn't blocking anyone, and it wasn't even slightly breaking any rules. However, in Karen's weakened, inebriated mind, it didn't fit the norms of her community. Her words, not mine. With a phone in hand and stilettos piercing the asphalt like she was going to launch a war, she marched down the street without knocking on a single door or verifying a single detail. She complained to the HOA towing service like a chihuahua on Red Bull, and the truck was gone an hour later. Exactly like that. No warning, no queries, not even a polite sticky note. Greetings from Prodigy Tales. Don't forget to subscribe and, like your excellent HOA drama, the embarrassment and sheer boldness. The woman returned to her front porch with a strut, as if she had fulfilled a civic obligation. She sat there drinking iced tea as if she had prevented the end of the world's automobiles. In the neighborhood group chat, she even dared to post a smug little remark that read, "We all must keep our streets orderly. I had the ugly truck removed. You're welcome." As I read it, I almost choked on my coffee. Now for the worst part. The universe had plans for Karen, but she was not prepared for them. Karen never once inquired as to who owned the truck. Not me, not the neighbors, not the HOA board. She simply saw it, judged it, and disappeared it like some parking lot vigilante with a god complex. Because as luck would have it, the unsightly truck she towed without authorization wasn't the property of a misplaced delivery driver, a reckless teenager, or a random neighbor. No. You really don't want to tick off owning the blacked-out Ford Raptor that was just off a mud trail and gleaming with police plates, but Karen didn't realize that. She assumed she had won another HOA battle and had just declared war on a man whose badge came with teeth and federal resources. The ripple effect didn't take long to occur, and by the time she discovered it, it was already too late. I could hear the quiet hum of diesel engines and the distinct crunch of boots on gravel that afternoon. The sheriff himself was standing. Outside my front window, his jaw set more tightly than Fort Knox, his sleeves rolled up. I tried to be calm as I stepped outside with coffee in hand because his truck was gone, and his attitude matched the storm that was building in the sky. At first he remained silent and simply looked around the street as if he were witnessing the unfolding of a murder scene. At last he turned to face me and posed the query that was on both of our minds. "Where's my truck?" I was going to ask. "You the same thing," but I shrugged. The sheriff got his phone out and began calls within 10 minutes. These communications contained terms like asset recovery, unauthorized tow, and dispatch 2 plainclothes to canvass the area. These are not the kinds of calls that you and I make, because this man wasn't just upset. He was also a surgeon. And because I had a strong intuition that I knew exactly which entitled, "By sundown." 2 black SUVs had arrived like a scene from a political thriller, outstripping 2 federal officials, who based on their fitted uniforms and earpieces didn't spend any time knocking on doors. Banshee had prodded this animal. They went around asking locals if they had seen anything strange, if they had seen any tow trucks, or if they had heard someone boasting about having a car taken out. It was only a matter of time until the finger was pointed directly at Karen. Now, I'd lived in this neighborhood long enough to know that Karen couldn't stop talking. When she felt she had done something good, she was obsessed with HOA drama. Naturally, she had already informed at least 3 others that she had dealt with the unpleasant large truck that was parked close to number 17. Her words, not mine. One of the agents whispered something into his wrist microphone as the agents circled back with their notes. They were getting ready for a confrontation. They weren't grinning or making courteous inquiries. As they approached her home like a SWAT raid was about to take place, Karen, wearing a silk robe and slippers, opened the door with the expression, "Oh good," and I stood on my porch watching the gears turn because there is no HOA clause in the world that can save you when you cross someone with a badge and a title. More individuals will respect my authority. "Ma'am, are you the person who ordered a truck to be towed from in front of number 17 earlier today?" one agent asked, while the other presented his badge. With her arms crossed as like she was anticipating, Thank you." She nodded smugly to them and said, "Yes, I did. That truck was ugly and didn't belong to anyone significant." For a split second, the agent's poker face was broken by that line. Because the crown jewels clashed with her drapery, the higher one gave her the look of someone who had just admitted to stealing them. The woman called the tow company as if she were placing an order for takeout after seeing the truck and hating it, without even bothering to inquire whose it was. The shorter, "Ma'am," calm but sharp, the agent replied. "You know that the car you had taken out belongs to this county's sheriff?" Karen blinked as if she had just been hit with a damp newspaper. The sheriff's confidence shook at the knees as her voice rose in amazement. "Well, how could I have known that it didn't have his name?" The agent silently gazed at her, allowing the excuse to linger in the air like a foul fart. She stumbled as she tried to get well, yelling about HOA rights and preserving the neighborhood's reputation, but it was too late. She practically heard her brain short-circuiting when she understood whose truck she had messed with. Then the worst part arrived. The agent displayed a tiny gadget, pressed a button to play a recording. Karen boasting to her neighbor, "If I don't like the way it's parked, it goes." In her own words. As simple as that, I believed I heard porcelain fracture when Karen's jaw struck the floor so forcefully. Despite her best efforts to refute it, the tape and the tow company's paper trail buried her deeper than a concrete vault. The self-declared parking enforcer in the neighborhood was suddenly caught red-handed, and her HOA badge of honor was on the verge of being melted down in court. Karen believed that things couldn't get much worse. However, that was before. The sheriff himself arrived with a team of legal hounds and a court-ordered smile, carrying documents longer than the HOA rulebook she used on a daily basis. Wearing flip-flops and leopard print, she stood motionless on her lawn in front of a line of subpoenas and civil violation warnings, as well as an attorney who had obviously been waiting his entire career for someone just like her. The iced drink slipped out of her hand like a slow-motion failure montage as she took one look at the paperwork. The spark was simply towing the sheriff's truck. When investigators began looking, they discovered more than they had anticipated. For example, she had been approving fictitious discoveries and using HOA money to renovate her kitchen, adding imported marble countertops and a mysteriously appearing jacuzzi tub the same week 3 budget reallocations were submitted. Next came the security tape from the neighbors, which showed Karen ordering landscapers to do work on her property at the HOA's expense. Not to mention the crippled veteran she harassed into repainting his mailbox 4 times since it didn't match the community's color scheme. She received a second civil complaint for that small action. By Wednesday morning, Karen's life was falling apart more quickly than a cheap sweater. Charges for illegal towing and damage to government property were brought by the sheriff's legal team. It turns out that the truck's undercarriage was scraped by the tow crew. Then the 5 civil suits from neighbors who had been waiting for this very moment to bury her in paperwork and retaliation arrived. The fines began piling up like Tetris bricks. The icing on the cake was a restraining order from the sheriff himself, which forbade her from approaching his truck, him or my front yard within 100 feet. After an emergency vote by the HOA members, everyone finally decided that Karen should be fired, removed from the board, and prohibited from attending meetings for the ensuing 10 years. When they read that last passage, her face appeared as though someone had flushed her entire identity down a golden toilet. These days, she hides behind curtains, and jumps at the sight of tow trucks while feigning that her inbox isn't overflowing with legal threats and final notices. The conclusion. To see more HOA showdowns like this one, please like and subscribe. Comment below if you believe Karen received what she deserved.